communications, and then after that we will have an opportunity for questions. So with that, I hand it over to Sheriff Easter.
Are you ready, ma'am? Well, thank you for coming today. We appreciate you being here. We just had a special advisory board meeting of the 911 Council, which I am the chair for this year. The purpose of that meeting and the purpose of talking to media today has to do with a report that was made on Cake Media in reference to the Wichita Fire Union, some misinformation they put out on 911 concerns, and we wanted to have some of us on the 911 Council weren't aware of some of the issues that were going on, so we wanted to have a clarification and an update on some of the CAD issues. If you don't know it, Alora will go into detail a little bit more about the computer-aided dispatch is what CAD is. And it's a new system that was just brought online in April that is the system that dispatches first responders, so EMS, fire, law enforcement. And there were some information that was put out by the fire union that I needed clarification on, to be real honest with you, because several of us in there were not aware of some of the information they put out. So we just had that particular meeting. I'm happy to tell you that some of that information is erroneous. However, is there issues with the new system? Yes. Some of those issues are an easy fix. Some of the issues are going to take a little bit longer to fix. Those issues have been relayed mainly by the area fire departments, so Sedgwick County Fire, the other local fire departments, and Wichita Fire, to Alora that maybe the union was not aware of, and they have been working in partnership to resolve some of those issues. And so as the chair, I was happy with the meeting, happy with the fact that everything was out on the table with what the issues were, some of them that are being worked on, some of them were new as of today that was brought to Alora's attention. And it's our responsibility as a 911 council to give direction to the 911 director, which is Alora Forshee. And that's what our purpose is. And so that's mainly what the meeting today was about, is to give better direction as a council to Alora in reference to the new CAD system. And with that, I will turn that over to Alora.
Alora Forshee. I'm the Director of Sedgwick County Emergency Communications. There's so much to unpack here, so I'm going to try not to get real long-winded with it. But just to give some overview and some background about what we're talking about here. So we're really thankful in Sedgwick County to have an advisory board that is made up of agency partners and department heads that help to protect the holistic view of emergency services. So we are, as a standalone agency, we serve every department. We serve our law enforcement partners, our fire partners, EMS, and we want to make sure that every stakeholder has a voice in the process, that everybody's advocating for their community in this process, and that we are hearing that advocation. So we're very thankful to have the advisory board there to help us to make sure that we're not missing any parts or pieces of anything that we're dealing with. Looking at the CAD project specifically, and as Sheriff Easter said, that is our warehouse, our computer system where we track everything. It creates documents that are used for investigation and prosecution, and everything that we do, everything that field units do is kind of logged in there, and that's what my staff does, is they use that system to make sure we have a clean record of what's occurred. We started about 7 years ago looking for a new CAD system. We recognized that the vendor we had and the system we had was not growing with our community, and it was not as dynamic as we needed it to be. We have a really large public safety community, and especially because we're consolidated under one dispatch center, our needs are very unique, and we need to be growing with our community. Our community deserves that growth, and so we wanted to make sure that we had a better system to serve them. We went to the advisory board once we had the green light to go with the CAD system, and we pulled together a multidisciplinary team to evaluate these CAD systems. So the Wichita Fire Department was selected as the fire representative from those fire agencies. We have Derby Fire, Sedgwick County Fire, suburban fire departments, and Wichita Fire represented on the advisory board. So they had a representative that was selected from there. The Wichita Police Department had a representative on there. We had IT staff on there, the Sheriff's Office and EMS, and of course 911. So we went through an RFP process. We did all the due diligence that we thought we should do on a system that was this large and this important and this expensive. We went out and did site visits so we could sit next to dispatchers and firefighters and IT folks and see what those systems look like, unfiltered with no vendor involvement. I think when cops talk to cops, they talk a little differently. And so we wanted to hear that really straight talk on that. And then as a group, that RFP team came together and unanimously selected the vendor that we moved forward with, which is Tyler Technologies. Then the process was to build out that system, and we involved all of our agency partners in that, especially the Wichita Fire Department has really complex response plans, and so they were involved in that, as were our other fire partners and, of course, our law enforcement and EMS partners. And so everybody got to say what they wanted, how they wanted to respond to emergencies. We built that out. We did functional testing that was involved with all of our partner agencies, including the Wichita Fire Department. I only speak to them specifically because that's kind of the statement that's driven this forward. And then finally on April 18th, we cut over and went live with this really big system. As expected with any go live of a really big computer system, there were glitches. There were not failures, but there were glitches and things that you can test everything that you want to test, but until you are live on that system and using it with the call volume that we have here in Sedgwick County, you figure out like, hey, we didn't have the right alert on this address, or we didn't have this. It was nothing that prevented field responders getting to the emergencies. I would say most of Sedgwick County, if they weren't involved in the project, had no idea we even cut over to a new CAD system. They called 911, the call was answered, field units were dispatched, they got on scene and provided that service. We did have some fire station alerting issues where it was tested by the vendor from what the vendor had provided to us. And when we cut over, it didn't work as expected. And so we did have to manually alert fire stations versus that being an automated process. The alert was still there. It just wasn't as seamless as it typically is. We worked through that, which was probably our biggest technical hurdle and cutover, and that is working now and doing what it's supposed to do. And so we're thankful for that. And then there's just been tweaks that are happening here and there. Like I said, it's, this one address, we may not ever go out to, maybe they've never even called 911 before, but when they've called, now we see within the CAD system, ooh, there's something here that we need to look at. We've had really great dialogue between our field crews and our staff, and of course our agency heads and myself and our deputy director and our IT staff has been working endlessly to support this to make sure everything is what we deserve for it to be. One of the things, I was here during the last CAD cutover, and I remember sitting as a dispatcher feeling like my interests were not represented. And I don't know that that was the truth at the time. It was a naive person who didn't get the bigger picture, but I definitely wanted my staff, the officers, the deputies, the firefighters, to feel like they had a system that was designed for them and their needs. And that's what we're working towards. At this point, I've met with the fire department heads that serve on our advisory board, the 3 full-time departments that kind of are in there, which is Sedgwick County Fire, Derby Fire, and Wichita Fire. They've got a list of really exciting things that they'd like to see out of this CAD system. Some really innovative ways to respond to fires and how to enhance this to make sure that their crews have what they need, that they have coverage to make sure the city is well taken care of. And all of that can be built into this CAD system, but that's not there yet. And so we're doing incremental enhancements as we're going, and we needed just a baseline to start with. And that baseline to start with is good. It's a baseline of, if there's a structure fire at this location, we're going to pull this apparatus from these stations, and that's how it's worked for 19 years that I've been with 911. And it works. But they want to do more, and we want them to do more. And this is why we spent the money we spent on the CAD system that we selected. It wasn't inexpensive. It was to make sure that we had the ability to grow and innovate within public safety, and that our departments had the ability to grow and innovate, because that's our service to them, is to provide that opportunity to serve at that level. I think that's all I wanted to talk about with CAD. But this is where even, as we keep going, as technology evolves, and this was our frustration with our previous CAD provider, was that it just didn't evolve as quickly as we needed it to. And so as technology evolves, we recognize that there are going to continue to be enhancements that we want to make, that as public safety is a very rapidly evolving field in every situation, in every discipline of it. So as fire evolves and how they want to respond, as law enforcement finds different avenues to better serve their community, we, in both the service we provide operationally and what my staff does, but also within that technology, we want to keep evolving with that. So the work will never stop. There's never going to be a drop dead date that, hey, we're going to have all this done by this day, because we don't want to stop and stay stagnant. We want to keep growing, and that's what we're working towards with these requests. And we're really happy to have partners that are communicating what they need, and happy to be able to give them as much as we can within the parameters of what's possible.
So kind of in closing, before we open it up for questions, kind of the history of the 911 Council or Advisory Board. As you know, during 9/11, there was a lot of issues, specifically in New York City, with first responders communicating together, working together, because they were all separate. That's when this coordinating council was developed, so that in a Wichita Sedgwick County area, we didn't have those same type of problems. So we have all of the department heads of the different disciplines in reference to public safety. We have IT that's represented, and we also have emergency management that's represented as well. And so that's the makeup of the 911 Advisory Board. The second piece that I want to end with is that it's very clear in the meeting that we just attended, we are very supportive of 911, and it absolutely supportive of the work that dispatchers do, the employees of Laura, and the everyday duties that they do. They do a fantastic job for this community. So I want to make sure that the public knows that from a department head standpoint, from each one of the disciplines, we are very supportive of 911 and the dispatchers who do their job in a professional, excellent manner every day. And with that, we'll take questions.
I guess what exactly, for people that didn't see the Facebook posts from the Firefighters Union, what exactly that's in those posts, what do they say, and what about them were not true or misinformation, as was stated earlier? Because I think a lot of people have seen those, but some people may not have, and there's several different claims in there. So which ones are true, which ones aren't, which one had to do with this CAD program and which ones didn't? Or
Sure. So I have not seen the Facebook post because I don't choose to be on Facebook, but I have certainly had things sent to me that were in there. So whether it's accurate as to what's just, I can't really speak to the Facebook post. I know that there was a news story done the other day where the statement was made that it was a not working CAD system, I believe is what the statement was. I don't know that that's an exact quote. So that would be erroneous. It is working. And really working quite well. Again, we have enhancements we want to make, but it is working. There were two calls specifically that were brought to my attention. One was a statement that a call had held for 5 minutes, and then, if I remember right, a fire crew then had to say, hey, we're going to go on this call because my staff was not dispatching it. The great thing, and sometimes the downside about 911 in our team, is everything's recorded. Everything's timestamped. That's what that CAD system does. That's what that recording system does. Our phone system does. Everything's recorded and timestamped. So I certainly looked at that call. It came in during a period of high call volume. It took around 2.5 minutes to answer the call. That's way outside of what our commitment is to our community, which is to answer the call within 15 seconds. We've been very transparent and have talked to media about that, talked to commission about that, about our struggles right now to meet our desired standard of service level as far as managing call volume with current staffing. We're not hiding anything there. Again, this is the reality. This is our 911 system as Wichitans, as Sedgwick County residents. This is what it is. And so So yes, that was outside of what we wanted that to be. The call was dispatched within 40 seconds from the time it was entered to dispatch. It was a firefighter, we call it jumping the call. So rather than us saying, hey, start to this, they said, show me en route to that. Had they not, dispatch was building the response plan in that of who they were going to send. So I think it would have been within seconds. So I'm not sure where the thought was that was not going to be sent. There was another call that happened. We had a CAD upgrade, our first one on this system. And I don't remember the morning. I apologize. I don't have that date in front of me, although I can get it. And it was a vehicle fire right across from the fire station. And so my team received it. There was no issues with receiving the call in a timely manner, answering it, putting it in for dispatch, dispatching it. In this upgrade, we had switched over to a secondary server as this upgrade was occurring. And again, first time doing it, and had no idea that fire station alerting services were not active on that server. There were several things that weren't active on it. So as my team dispatches it, they're waiting for a fire unit to check en route. They did not check en route because they were unaware of the call, because I assume they weren't monitoring radio. It was about 5:30 in the morning. And so then when we realized they weren't en route, we called the station, notified them of the fire. But that response time, we would take ownership in that, and that we should have ensured that they were aware of the call within that. So we've addressed that through our team, and I feel like appropriately addressed it. We've also addressed it on the technology side of when we could switch over to that secondary server to make sure that those things are not missing. So absolutely, we take ownership in that. I have a human staff. We are going to make mistakes. And again, as the director of 911 and as a community member that uses it, I think we have no choice but to be transparent in those. So I will absolutely own that one. So those are the things that are erroneous that were on Facebook that I've been made aware of. And then, like I said, there were some things in a news story that were inaccurate.
So just to kind of follow up on that a little bit, there was some statements made in there. You remember, CAD is for EMS, fire, and law enforcement. The general statement was, and I'm not going to quote it because I don't remember exactly the statement, but it was close to, the citizens should be very afraid because people are going to die because of this CAD system. I can tell you from a law enforcement standpoint, that's not true. Our CAD part is working very well, and we had some issues in the beginning, but those issues have been corrected. There was also some other statements that 911 has a 70% turnover rate. That's not true either. Their turnover rate for 2023 was around 43%, actually 48% for 2022, and so far this year it's 29%. So there's just some inaccuracies. And if you leave that as the only story out there, then the citizens are going to believe that those are the facts, and they're not. I'm not here to disparage the fire union. They have their concerns and their issues. But I, as the sheriff and also as the 911 chair, I deal in facts. And so I want to make sure the facts are correct, whether they're good, bad, ugly, doesn't matter. The issue for me is they need to be factual.
And in 2008, there was a new CAD system that came online also, and that particular CAD system, it's technology. We had issues at that moment, and they worked themselves out, and we used it for how many years? Is that,
Yeah, so the previous CAD system was probably 2008, I got to do my math here. So about 16 years, I think, is where we are with that. And absolutely, we did have issues. I have been around for the implementation of our radio system, and we had issues with that. We are a very large system, and I think we forget that sometimes because we have a really small town community feel, and we forget that we're kind of a big hitter in the 911 industry. And as far as size and what we serve, and so we have really large systems that come with that. And so anytime you pull together a large system, whether it's our radio, our telephony, the CAD, there are going to be issues, and we try to mitigate everything we can up front. And then when you pull the plug and you cut over, you kind of brace yourself and hold on tight. And really, from what I've gone through with the CAD system previously and the radio system, this one went way better. But still issues. I mean, we're not going to pretend like there weren't any.
But even then, that system still ended up serving us for 16 years.
Absolutely.
So
it did.
how long was the fire alert system not working properly when you switched over to the second server? Like
So,
minutes,
and again,
hours?
to clarify, it was working. It was a manual trigger of it versus an automated. But it was 8 days that we had to work through that, and it was engaging the vendor. And this is part of what we've asked for in the budget from our commission, and brought that to their attention, that this system that is really critical it's older, and its technology's evolved a lot since then. So it is outside of vendor support. I know on the Wichita fire side, Chief Snow was just in front of her council on Tuesday talking about kind of their end of it in the stations also being very old and needing replacing. And so we've recognized this even before the cutover of CAD. And so, yes, that was, but again, we were still able to manually trigger it. We also have backups to that system because technology is finicky at times, even the newest of technology. And so we've got layers of backups in that. They get notified through an app. They get notified through text messages. We have a phone into the station that's not an IP phone. A lot of layers of redundancy built in there because in emergency services, taking chances is not something we like to do.
We have time for 2 more questions.
So the fire union said they've had a lot of issues. They had a lot of replies from citizens saying that they had trouble when calling into 911 and either being put on hold or being transferred. What can you kind of say to the public to make sure they feel safe when calling 911?
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. There were statements about I couldn't get through, or nobody answered the phone, and that I would say is inaccurate. The FCC guidelines and regulations with the phone system is that once you've gotten through to that 911 circuit, that call never drops. Even if you hang up, that call is going to feed through to us so that you've gotten through. So we don't transfer off emergency calls. The only transfers we do is, for example, over to like the Wichita Police case desk to make a non-emergent report, or if you're asking for animal control, something like that. We don't transfer off emergency calls. But we, again, have been very transparent about there are periods during the day where we have more calls coming in than what we can answer in 15 seconds. It is not more calls than we can answer. It's just more than we can answer in 15 seconds. Right now, looking at our numbers, in 2022, we averaged about 80% of calls answered within 15 seconds. The industry standard is 90% within 15 seconds. So we know that we want improvement in that area. And we're on track for about the same percentage this year. And this is, we're in the middle of renovating our 911 center to make sure that we have space to grow with our community, that our department has space to grow. And so we've had great commitment from our commissioners to invest in our 911 system. But bottom line is, we are going to answer the call. We're going to answer it as fast as we can. We're going to get you help as fast as we can. We work shift work. We work in, we miss our kids' ball games and our school programs because our team has a heart of service in making sure our community has what they need. And they take being that lifeline very seriously. As a member of the community, I have no qualms or concerns that calls are going to be answered.
And the union is saying they want to have, sit down. They just want to have a discussion, sit down, have a meeting between you all, EMS, fire department, police department, county commissions, management. Mm-hmm. Is that something you guys are willing to do, talk about, to find a solution?
So the great thing about that advisory board, and that's what, talking about the genesis of that and what that board does, is that's what that board does. I mean, that's their whole purpose, is to provide that input and insight into what that department needs, and then input in how we better serve that department. Not only have we met with the advisory board, we have met with fire department chiefs and their respective personnel, outside of that, even to dig deeper into what the fire department needs and what they want from their staff. And so I think the avenues that we are pursuing are the avenues that are going to give us the growth within the system that we want to serve the fire department, and that's what's going to provide the best benefit.
Yes, Laura, you had mentioned that these were glitches, not failures on the part of this new CAD system. And Sheriff Easter, you had said that this meeting had just wrapped up. You had these discussions. So talk a little bit about, I guess, what is being done now. You had mentioned some of these issues might take a little bit longer than others. So what are ways that are being actively worked on to remedy that? And how long do you expect that to last?
I know you said I don't want to speak for you, but some of the ongoing work is going to be, again, that enhancement of response plans and how we innovate within those response plans within what the fire department's wanting to do for their community that they serve in that. And so those are ever evolving. That's why I said there's not going to be any drop dead date that, this is where we stay and we don't go any further. This CAD system is very driven by location of the unit. I mean, getting the right person there is great, but we want them there really fast. And so figuring out who the closest person is or who the closest unit is and sending that is what we want to have happen, right? So that's part of what we have been working through, and some of that's in the hardware, that's in the trucks, of making sure it's giving us a clean signal. My cell phone tells me I'm in Texas all the time, and I'm sitting here in Kansas, so I know that location services for technology can get a little bit wonky. And so that was part of what we were talking about in there, and we've worked with EMS very closely on making sure that we have really great location data from them to know that CAD's sending the right person. On the fire side, I know that was some concerns brought up from them, and they were doing some internal digging on their end to make sure that it's not a hardware issue. And that was one of the new issues that was presented in there, that from their point of view, absolutely, they're doing their due diligence before they send it over. But again, we're encouraging them to send over everything you've got so we can dig into it. That's really kind of what our bigger issue is right now, just making sure that we have the response plans that the agencies want, and again, continuing to build those out, and then just making sure everything's talking well. Some of the reporting pieces of how we send information over to the record system for Wichita PD, for example, or EMS has a record. Everybody has a record system, of course, that they work in, and making sure that those interfaces are delivering the right information. And that's been an ongoing conversation and really productive, and have had great results in the work being done on that.
I want to make sure I get one thing right for clarification. So the technical side of it, those are kind of the more run-of-the-mill short-term issues that you're working on, but some of the more organizational, who can respond fastest, things along those lines, those are some of the things that you're focused on right now as well.
The who can respond fastest and the technology is our absolute priority, and those are, again, those technology issues. The ongoing work is going to be continuing to build out to what the desired response plans are for the departments, and desired enhancements to what we have now.
At this time, I'd like to give Laura an opportunity to review the queue system. If a citizen calls into 911, what that might sound like. And then we'll have a moment for final thoughts from the sheriff if he has any, and that will be the end of our conference. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, and thank you, Nicole, for bringing that up. When people say that I've called 911 and I got voicemail or recording, things like that, they do at times call and get a recording. It is certainly not voicemail. We don't ever roll the phones to voicemail. But years ago, we had some concerns brought up from citizens that I've called 911, the phone rings, and I don't know if I've even gotten through to the right place. And so that panic feeling of like, has my call even gone through, was something that, of course, beyond the fact that we want that call answered just immediately, we did not like that piece of how that served our community. So we worked with our phone vendor to come up with what's called a queuing system. And a lot of larger systems have this, where that will, if everybody's on the phone, there's nobody available to snatch that 911 call up immediately, then it will pop you into what's a queue that says, hey, you've reached the right place. You've reached Sedgwick County 911. Stay on the line. We'll be with you. Don't hang up. Your call will be answered by the next available dispatcher. Those are answered then and fed through to our staff as they become available in the order that they're received on the system. Again, if you hang up, it still comes through, so we ask people not to do that. But that is what that recording is that people get. And you may hit that queue for 3 seconds, you may hit that queue for 20 seconds. And so it's just a way to let people know they've gotten through, your call is successfully routed, hang tight, and we'll be right with you.
Sheriff, if you have any closing comments?
No, we appreciate you coming here today. And like I said, it's just a clarification for the citizens to understand that there is issues with the new CAD system, like any time you get new technology. Those glitches and issues are being worked through by department heads and with 911. So the citizens can be reassured that you're still going to get the same safety services that you're used to, and we will continue to provide great customer service in this community. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. That's the conclusion of our conference.
Thank you, guys.